The Booker Prize has announced their 2023 longlist, and some people are angry. I saw one comment questioning if the Booker Prize was even trying to pick the best books anymore. Do they have a point? While I think it would be silly to call Sebastian Barry and Tan Tuan Eng unheard of authors, the longlist does contain several titles that a lot of book reviewers were completely unaware of. Pearl by Sian Hughes is one such example that I will use throughout this video. For comparison, I've put together an alternative longlist containing 13 of the more fancied titles, but I'm going to use Barbara Kingsolver's novel Demon Copperhead as a representation of the books that missed out. Does the Booker longlist really represent the 13 best books available, or is my alternative longlist better? I want to start with asking why some people think the Booker might not be putting forward the best 13 books. And I think we can all agree that getting nominated for the Booker Prize will make a huge difference to the sales of any novel. But for Sian Hughes, Pearl's original print run will now sell out, and it will ensure that Indigo Press will have to print many more copies. Being longlisted will simply do wonders to Sian Hughes' career, and it will help a tiny publishing house in Indigo Press grow larger and represent more authors. For Demon Copperhead, I'm certainly not saying that a Booker nomination wouldn't have an influence on sales, but Demon has already been reprinted 5 times between May and July alone. It has sold almost 100,000 physical copies in the UK alone, and that's just physical copies. Barbara Kingsolver and Faber and Faber are doing just fine without a Booker Prize nomination. The Booker has just given Sian Hughes a wonderful shout out, and may she do well from it. But the purpose of the Booker Prize is to recognise the best books. It is not a charity. Actually, the Booker Prize is a charity. They state on their website that they are a charity established to promote the art and value of literature for the public benefit. And just FYI, their website also states that they do a whole bunch of cool things such as distribute books to disadvantaged readers, promote reading in prisons, and fund the creation of Braille literature. But let's ignore the semantics. Does the Booker exist to promote books or to judge the best books? This question is phrased in the form of a lie. The Booker doesn't exist to do one or the other, but to do both. These things are not contradictory to each other. The problem is with the assumption that in excluding the better known authors, the Booker is excluding the better books. Lesser known doesn't mean lesser talented. Has Pearl been judged before people have even read it? I don't think people are really criticising the Booker for including Pearl. I don't think they're saying Pearl shouldn't have made it. I don't think they're trying to be negative about one particular book, but rather the longlist as a whole. What they're really saying is, where is Demon Copperhead? Demon won the Woman's Prize, it won the Pulitzer Prize. Surely there's an argument that it should be included. And I agree that just because Demon is a successful book doesn't mean that it should be excluded from the longlist. But why do we think that it being successful is an argument for it to be included on the longlist? There are 2 things happening here, and the first thing is called system justification bias. So examples of system justification bias are when you do your grocery shopping and say you want to buy hummus, and when you go to buy the hummus that you want to buy, your favorite brand is sold out. You're more likely to buy a brand that you're aware of or familiar with than a completely new brand that you haven't heard of. This also happens in elections. When we vote, we're more likely to vote for a political party that we know of than a small one, even when the small one better represents our values. In Australia, it is very hard for the Greens or an independent party to win a seat in Parliament. But when they do win a seat, the major parties find it almost impossible to displace them. Having overcome system justification bias, the small parties suddenly begin to benefit from it. It's worth pointing out that system justification bias isn't saying the new brand of hummus or the smaller political parties are better or worse than the status quo. All it is saying is that you're more likely to pick something you know of than something that you don't know of. We know Demon Copperhead. We know it does well in prizes. We know a lot of readers love it. Therefore, a lot of people expect to see it on the Booker Prize. The other thing that is happening is the assumption that some books are definitively better than others. but there's no mathematical equation to figure out how good a book is. If books were a science, we could just simply measure something. If books were a sport, we could produce a ranking system based on wins or losses. But you cannot definitively say Demon Copperhead is better or worse than Pearl. The only arguments being produced are based on weight of opinion. And well, if you want a book prize based on weight of opinion, follow the Goodreads prize and tell me there aren't any issues with that award. The Booker Prize is judged by 5 different judges each year, and all they have to go on is their own subjective opinions on what the best books are and their ability to argue with the other 4 judges. Does anybody really think that this year's judges would produce the same long list as last year's judges if they were asked to judge the 2022 Booker Prize? The 13 books selected are not the definitive best books of the year, not because the Booker Prize has some sort of agenda, but because that definitive list doesn't exist. It is impossible to create. And if you disagree with me, I challenge you to come up with a system for measuring book quality that can be repeated by different judges and get the same results. Is it really that hard for some people to believe that 5 people found Demon Copperhead merely average? There may also be some emotions surrounding Victory City and Salman Rushdie. He's certainly had a traumatic year, one of which I don't wish upon anybody. He's one of the most long-listed authors ever, and it wouldn't have been a surprise to see him on the long list. But this is starting to feel like some people saying that the Booker Prize isn't allowed to have an agenda towards small authors, but they're allowed to have an agenda to support Salman Rushdie. Surely the right time to support Salman Rushdie is on the awards night rather than rewarding his book. We could acknowledge what happened. Let's acknowledge that he was stabbed in an attempt to silence and intimidate the author. Let's not give a prize to Victory City if the Booker judges didn't think it was one of the 13 best. When a booktuber reveals their top 10 books at the end of the year, nobody gets angry and says, why do you have an agenda with this list? Why can't you just pick the 13 best books? When we don't agree with somebody, we assume that it's about our differences in tastes. So why are we not making the same assumption about the Booker judges? I think this is because some people want to other the Booker Prize. They want to label it not part of the booktube community. It's only something that we discuss. But I think you'll find some of the Booker judges do actually watch booktube. This anger doesn't really come from the long list itself, but from a well-known psychological effect, system justification bias, and from the lack of awareness that books cannot be ranked. By all means, be disappointed that a book you loved missed out, but unless you've actually read the long list, anger at this stage is just absurd. I've been Scott, you've been watching Gunpowder Fiction and Plot. Please make sure to like this video and subscribe. Bye bye.